there, classic dish time today, homemade quiche. We're going to start by making the pastry from scratch, and we'll begin with telling you what you need for that. 125 grams of cubed soft butter. All butter comes in 250 gram blocks, so you don't necessarily need to weigh that out. You can cut it in half and cube it. 270 grams of plain flour, a little salt, a handful of soft green herbs, approximately 40 mils of cold water, and 1 egg. Now, first things first, don't be put off making homemade pastry. You don't need any equipment, you need a bowl, you need hands, and you need some scales. We're going to weigh out into this bowl 270 grams of plain flour. And there we are. The soft, cubed, unsalted butter that we weighed out earlier. We're going to add this into the flour now. Very clean hands. We're going to bring the flour and butter together and make a crumb. It'll take a few minutes, so I'll show you how I begin. Very simple, I just start breaking the fat down into the flour. Incorporating the flour as I go along. Once it's broken down a bit, you can start rubbing it together, like that. Now, this whole process takes 4 minutes, 3 or 4 minutes, but it wouldn't be the most interesting video watching me doing that. So let's move on to what it's going to look like in 3 or 4 minutes. Don't worry too much if you've got wee clumps here. That's all going to get worked in. The important thing with pastry, as you probably all know, is to not overhandle it too much. So in here, to go back, 270 grams of plain flour and 125 of butter. We're going to add some salt. We're going to get a little handful of green herbs and chop them up. You don't have to add the pastry. It gives it a little bit of colour when you bake it out, but also obviously it gives you a little bit of flavour. I used parsley, but you could use thyme, tarragon, whatever you've got really. Dried herbs will also work. Let's just mix all that through. Make a little well in the middle here. We're going to get 1 room temperature egg. We're going to crack it in. And we're going to add that 40 mils of cold water as well. And you're just going to bring that all together. I'm doing this by hand in a bowl. You'll see that I'm just keeping one hand clean and working the moisture in. If your pastry starts to feel too dry, you can add more water. I think this is pretty correct so far. I can feel it. We're going to bring that in until all of that is worked through. And then what we'll do is we'll just bring it out onto the board and just check. Should look a little bit dry and crumbly at this point. Great thing about making pastries, you don't need to keep going to the sink and clogging up the sink with dirty fingers. Your hands are super clean, just rub them together and it'll get rid of the residue. Let's just work that together ever so slightly. What you have to remember with making homemade pastry is that it needs to chill. It needs to, when you pin it out later, once it's had half an hour, 45 minutes in the fridge, it's going to pin out a lot nicer, handle a lot better. Don't know if you can see that now, but you'll see that I've made approximately 400 grams of nice fresh herb pastry in just a couple of minutes. What we'll do, when you're chilling down your pastry block, wrap it up nice and tight. Smooth it out a wee bit. And then it's into the fridge for about 30 to 45 minutes. So the next stage is to pin your pastry out. I'm going to use a 9-inch fluted quiche tin here. I'm going to unwrap the pastry. And I'm just going to dust my bench with a little bit of flour. Dust the top and give my tin a wee dust. So we kind of want to keep a circular shape and we want to have some overhang because all pastry, when it's baking, there is some shrinkage. We're also not going to use baking beans today. You can use them if you've got them by making a cartouche. and putting the beans in, or baking paper or whatever, and filling it with beans. But if you actually prick it, it will let the air through and it shouldn't rise up too much. But also the overhang is so that when it's cooking, you still get a nice level around the top of your quiche. We're going to take our rolling pin, we're just going to gently ridge here, here, here. You'll see that after 35-45 minutes in the fridge, much easier to roll out. Now, I wouldn't say you have to do this really quickly, but you want to get this done before your pastry warms up. In a kitchen, we normally do this first thing in the morning when the kitchen's nice and cold. We're just going to roll it out like so. And now we're ready to place it into the tin. You'll notice I haven't got a perfect circle, but how I place it in we'll be able to press the pastry into all these wee grooves. You don't need to grease the tin. It's a brand new tin. If you've got a really old quiche dish or something, I would maybe give it a wee spray or a bit of butter. We're going to roll that pastry back up, and then starting at a reasonable length, we're just going to roll that pastry in. And all I'm doing is I'm not pushing, I'm lifting. I don't want this to break down. You'll see I've got plenty pastry. Let's have a wee look. Now that it's lifted into place, you'll see that I'm just very gently folding this under so that there's no weight, and I'm pressing it down. Now, as I said earlier, you can fill this with baking paper and baking beans and bake it. What we're going to do though is we're going to prick it. We're going to put it into the fridge just to let the pastry firm up a wee bit again, and then we're going to bake this for 10 minutes at 180, and then I'm going to remove it at that point and I'm going to egg wash it, and then I'm going to put it back into the oven for about another 10 minutes, and at that point we'll be on to filling and baking the thing. But to prick it, just start at the edges. Many hours since. Okay, all ready for the fridge. Back soon. So this is just out the oven. 10 minutes. Took it out. Egg wash. Another 10 minutes at 180, and now we're ready to make the filling. Now, quiche fillings, you can be as creative as you like. Lots of classic ones to work with. The one that I'm going to choose today, we're going to use some of this beautiful blue cheese from Tain. It's called Blue Murder. I'm a big fan of blue cheese. If you're not, simply replace this with a cheese of your choice. We've got some nice leeks that have been softened in butter. Got some lovely eggs from Michael, my lovely egg man, and some Scottish double cream from Graham's Dairies. We're going to begin by adding 500 mils of that cream to a bowl, and we're going to add a wee bit of salt. Now, the egg ratio to cream ratio, in my opinion, should be 2 full eggs and 1 yolk to that much cream. Now, this is going to bake nicely and it's going to set nicely, and it's going to give you a little bit of a wobble when it comes out the oven, but it won't set really thick. If you're kind of making it for a lunchbox, add in another egg and it'll set it a little bit firmer. We're going to get 1 egg, break it into the cream, and then for the last one, we're just going to add the yolk. Okay, and we're going to whisk this together. Got a nice pale custard colour. Now you can arrange the next bit however you like. If you're doing like a crispy bacon quiche or anything like that, you can pretty much just layer everything up. So we're going to get my lovely Blue Murder, just nice and rustic. We're just going to break this into nice wee crumbly bits. This cheese is, if you like blue cheese, please find it. It's really one of my favourites. Scatter these nice crumbly bits. It's kind of like a roquefort in that it's not it's nice and creamy. I think it's great in a tart or a quiche. Now we're going to put all of these wee bits in here. Now, in terms of quantities, to recap, we did 500 mils of double cream, 2 full eggs and 1 egg yolk, and a little bit of salt. And then in here, we've added 180 grams of cheese, and this is half a leek that's been seasoned and sauteed in a little butter. I'm just going to spread this over the top here. This is going to take approximately 25 minutes to bake, and then about 10-15 minutes when it comes out the oven. Once it's firmed up a wee bit, we'll be able to take the edge off the pastry and take a slice. So the blue cheese and the leeks are in here, and then all we're going to do, nice and neatly, is just pour over this cream and egg mix. So with this dish, we're going to bake it a little bit lower than we did with the pastry. We're going to bake it at 170 for 25 minutes. So quick note, baked it for 30 minutes, not 25. When it came out, it had a nice little wobble on it. What I've done is I've let it sit out for 5 or 10 minutes to just firm up a little bit. And what we're going to do first is take off this overhanging pastry. So we're going to take a pastry knife just around the edge. There you go, and that'll give you that nice, neat edge that we were talking about earlier. Stop now. So I'm Barry Bryson. I hope you liked today's recipe. If you did, give my video a like, and if you'd like to see more, please subscribe to my YouTube channel.